Let me ask you a question, and don't answer it casually. Answer it honestly. What are you focusing on right now? Because whether you realize it or not, your life today is not an accident. It's not luck. It's not fate. It is the direct result of what you've been focusing on day after day, thought after thought, emotion after emotion. You don't get what you want in life. You don't get what you wish for. You get what you consistently focus on. And the moment you truly understand that, you take back control, not just of your results, but of your destiny. Think about this for a moment. Focus is not something you have, it's something you use. And whatever you use it on, you energize. Focus is the real force behind every outcome because it determines what you see, what you feel, and ultimately what you do. Two people can live in the exact same environment, face the same challenges, have access to the same resources, and end up with completely different lives. Why? Because they're focusing on different things. Your focus is like a magnifying glass. Whatever you place it on gets bigger. If you focus on what's missing, lack expands. If you focus on what's wrong, problems multiply. But when you focus on growth, on solutions, on what's possible, something incredible happens. You start to notice opportunities that were always there but invisible before. Life doesn't suddenly change. You change the way you look at it. Most people believe their circumstances control their focus. They think when things get better, then I'll feel better. When I succeed, then I'll focus on gratitude. When I have confidence, then I'll take action. But that's backward. Your focus creates your emotional state, and your emotional state drives your behavior. Change what you focus on, and you change how you feel. Change how you feel, and you change what you're willing to do. You've felt this before. There are moments when you're exhausted, drained, overwhelmed, and then suddenly something shifts. You remember why you started. You picture a future that excites you. You recall a moment when you overcame something you once thought was impossible, and in an instant, your energy changes. Your body straightens, your voice changes, your certainty rises. Nothing outside of you changed. Your focus did, and that shift is not small, it's everything. Because focus tells your brain what matters. Your brain is constantly filtering millions of bits of information every second, and it only lets a tiny fraction into your conscious awareness. That filter is controlled by focus. If you're focused on fear, your brain scans for danger. If you're focused on failure, it looks for proof that you're not enough. But when you focus on progress, on contribution, on growth, your brain begins to work for you instead of against you. This is why people who win don't wait to feel confident. They focus themselves into confidence. They don't wait for certainty. They focus on what they can control. They don't deny problems, but they refuse to live there. They ask different questions, not why is this happening to me, but what can I learn from this? Not why can't I do this, but how can I make this work? And the quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of the questions you ask, because questions direct focus. Here's the hard truth. If you don't consciously choose your focus, the world will choose it for you. The news will choose it. Social media will choose it. Other people's fears, opinions, and expectations will choose it. And before you know it, you're living in reaction instead of intention. You're busy, but not fulfilled. Moving, but not progressing. Alive, but not truly living. High performers understand something deeply. They train their focus like a muscle. They know that focus is not about intensity once in a while. It's about consistency every day. It's about where you place your attention first thing in the morning and last thing at night. It's about what you rehearse in your mind when no one is watching. Because what you rehearse, you reinforce. And what you reinforce becomes your reality. When you focus on what you can give, you discover abundance. When you focus on improving just one small thing today, momentum builds. When you focus on your standards instead of your moods, discipline becomes easier. And when you focus on who you're becoming instead of what you're lacking, your identity begins to shift. That's when results stop feeling forced and start feeling natural. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about deciding what deserves your energy. Because energy is finite. Attention is precious. And every moment you spend focused on what drains you is a moment stolen from what could elevate you. So here's the real question. Not what do you want, but what are you focusing on right now? Because that focus is shaping your next decision, your next emotion, your next action. And over time, those moments stack. They compound. They become your life. Change your focus, and you don't just change a moment, you change your direction. Now let me take this one level deeper, because understanding focus without understanding how your brain filters reality is like driving a powerful car without knowing how the steering works. You're not experiencing life as it is, you're experiencing life as your nervous system allows you to see it, and that filter is being shaped every single day by what you focus on most. Your brain is designed to protect you, not to make you happy. Every second it's processing an overwhelming amount of information, sounds, sights, sensations, memories, emotions. If it let everything in, you'd be paralyzed. So it makes decisions for you. It deletes what it believes is unimportant. It distorts what doesn't fit your beliefs. And it generalizes patterns to help you survive. None of this is good or bad, it's efficient. But here's the danger. Your brain doesn't decide what's important. You do. And you do it through focus. When you repeatedly focus on something, you tag it as significant. You tell your brain, this matters, watch for this, and your brain obeys. Focus on rejection, and you'll notice every slight, every delay, every unanswered message. Focus on opportunity, and suddenly you see doors where others see walls. Focus is not passive, it's a command system. This is why two people can hear the same feedback and walk away with completely different experiences. One person hears an attack, another hears guidance. Same words, different filters. The difference is not intelligence or talent, it's what they've trained their brain to look for. Think about how many times you've said, I don't know why this keeps happening to me. What you really meant was, I don't know why I keep seeing this, because once your brain labels something as a pattern, it will hunt for confirmation. It wants to be right, and it will find evidence, even if it has to ignore 10 positive things to highlight one negative. That's not life working against you, that's conditioning. And most people are unconsciously conditioning themselves every day. They replay past failures, they rehearse worst case scenarios, they obsess over what they can't control, and then they wonder why they feel anxious, stuck, or overwhelmed. Your brain can't tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something you actually experience. What you feed it repeatedly becomes familiar. Familiar becomes seen, comfortable. Comfortable becomes normal, even when it's painful. But here's the empowering part. This system works just as powerfully in your favor when you use it intentionally. When you consistently focus on progress, your brain starts scanning for improvements. When you focus on solutions, it begins connecting ideas you didn't know were related. When you focus on contribution, you notice ways to add value everywhere you go. The world didn't change. Your filter did. This is why clarity is so powerful. Vague focus creates vague results. But when you get crystal clear about what matters, who you want to become, what you're building, what you're committed to, your brain starts aligning your perceptions, your emotions, and your actions in that direction. It becomes easier to take action, not because life got easier, but because confusion disappeared. And understand this, your environment is constantly competing for control of your focus. Every notification, every headline, every opinion is trying to hijack your filter. If you don't decide in advance what deserves your attention, you'll live in reaction mode. You'll be busy but not fulfilled, informed but not empowered, connected but not focused. High-level performers don't have better lives, they have better filters. They've trained themselves to ask empowering questions automatically. What's useful here? What's within my control? What's the next step? These questions force the brain to search for answers that move life forward instead of keeping it stuck. And this isn't about ignoring reality. It's about choosing which part of reality to amplify. Because whatever you consistently amplify becomes your experience. Your brain doesn't argue. It organizes itself around your focus. So if you want to change your results, don't start by trying to change everything in your life. Start by changing what you train your BR. Aim to notice, decide what matters, decide what gets your energy, decide what you will no longer rehearse, because once you control your filter, you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your experience. Now understand this, focus alone sets direction, but emotion is what gives it force. Energy flows where attention goes, but it multiplies where emotion lives. That's why two people can focus on the same goal and get completely different results. One is intellectually interested, the other is emotionally committed. One thinks about change, the other feels it, and emotion is the difference between motion and momentum. Your emotions are not random, they are signals created by what you choose to focus on and the meaning you attach to it. Focus on loss and you feel pain. Focus on gratitude and you feel strength. Focus on fear and your body contracts. Focus on possibility and your energy expands. Your body responds instantly, long before logic gets involved. That's why emotion is the fastest way to change your state, and your state determines how you show up in the world. Most people are trying to change their lives at the level of logic. They tell themselves they should be motivated, they should be disciplined, they should feel confident, but should has no power. Emotion does. You don't act based on what you know. You act based on what you feel strongly enough about. And what you feel strongly about is shaped by where your attention goes most often. Think about it. Have you ever done something that made no logical sense, but emotionally it felt right in the moment? Of course you have. Emotion overrides reason every time, and that's not a flaw, it's a design. Emotion is the fuel system, focus points the car. Emotion presses the accelerator. This is why people stay stuck even when they know better. They focus on what they've done. Want with intense emotion. They don't just think about failures, they feel it. They don't just notice fear, they rehearse it. And the body responds as if the threat is real. Stress chemicals flood the system, vision narrows, creativity shuts down. In that state, you don't access your best ideas, you access survival patterns. But flip that focus and everything changes. When you focus on a compelling future with strong emotion, your energy rises, your posture changes, your breathing deepens, your voice carries certainty. Suddenly, actions that felt heavy feel natural. Discipline stops being a fight because desire takes over. This isn't motivation, it's alignment. And here's what most people don't realize. Emotion is trainable. You don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. You can generate it deliberately by choosing what you focus on and how vividly you experience it. When you bring intensity, imagery, and meaning to your focus, your nervous system responds immediately. That's why people can walk into a room defeated and walk out transformed. Not because their problems disappeared, but because their emotional focus shifted. They stopped feeding what drained them and started fueling what empowered them. Energy is not just physical, it's emotional and mental. And every time you focus on something with feeling, you're voting for that experience to grow. Focus on resentment with emotion and it hardens. Focus on progress with emotion and momentum builds. Focus on purpose with emotion and endurance increases. This is also why passion is contagious. When someone speaks with emotional alignment, people feel it. They don't need convincing. Emotion communicates faster than words ever could. That's why leadership is not about information, it's about emotional certainty. People follow energy before they follow ideas. But here's the challenge. The world is constantly trying to hijack your emotional focus. Fear sells, outrage spreads, distraction numbs. If you don't protect your emotional focus, it will be trained for you by headlines, algorithms, and other people's unresolved emotions. And over time, you'll feel exhausted without knowing why. High performers guard their emotional energy like their life depends on it, because it does. They don't avoid negative emotions, but they don't live there. They process them, learn from them, and then deliberately redirect their focus to what strengthens them. They choose emotional states that support action, not sabotage it. And this doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means deciding what deserves emotional investment. Pain can teach, fear can signal, but obsession drains. There's a difference between awareness and attachment. You can acknowledge a challenge without feeding it your life force. Ask yourself this honestly. What are you emotionally focused on most days? What story are you rehearsing with feeling? Because that story is shaping your energy, your behavior, and your results. When you align focus with empowering emotion, effort decreases and impact increases. You stop pushing uphill and start moving with force. And when that happens consistently, the universe doesn't need convincing. It responds because energy doesn't lie. Let's clear something up right now, because this is where a lot of people quietly sabotage themselves. The universe doesn't respond to hope. It doesn't respond to vague wishes. It doesn't respond to someday. It responds to clarity. Clear intention creates clear direction. Unclear intention creates noise, hesitation, and mixed results. Most people say they want more success, more freedom, more fulfillment. But when you ask them what that actually looks like, they hesitate. They speak in generalities. I just want to be happy. I just want things to work out. That's not a target. That's a fog. And you can't hit a target you can't see. Clarity is power because it eliminates confusion, and confusion is the real enemy of progress. When you're unclear, your brain can't organize resources. Your emotions don't commit. Your actions hesitate. You start and stop. You move, but not in a straight line. And then you call it procrastination, when in reality, it's uncertainty. Think about the moments in your life when you moved with absolute certainty, when you knew what you wanted, why you wanted it, and what you were willing to do to get it. In those moments, effort didn't feel like effort. You didn't need motivation. You didn't need permission. You moved because clarity pulled you forward. That's how this works. The universe doesn't guess what you mean. It responds to what you consistently signal through your decisions, your standards, and your focus. When your signals are mixed, the response is mixed. When your signals are clear, life organizes around them. This is why people who are crystal clear seem lucky. Opportunities find them. The right people show up. Timing appears perfect. But it's not magic, it's alignment. They know what matters, so they notice what supports it. They say no faster, they act sooner, they stay consistent longer. Clarity also creates boundaries. When you know what you're building, Distractions lose their power. You stop chasing every opportunity and start committing to the right ones. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't share your vision, not because you're arrogant, but because you're focused. And understand this, clarity doesn't mean you have every step figured out. It means you're clear about direction and standards. You don't need the full map. You need a true north. Once that's set, the next step always reveals itself. Most people wait for certainty before they deck. But certainty comes after commitment, not before it. When you decide with clarity, your brain starts solving problems you didn't know how to solve. Your emotions stabilize, your confidence grows, not because everything is easy, but because you are no longer divided inside. Internal conflict drains energy. Clarity restores it. And here's the part that changes everything. Clarity forces responsibility. When you're vague, you can blame circumstances. When you're clear, you own your outcomes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what am I committed to creating? That shift alone changes how you show up in every situation. The universe responds to that level of ownership, not to words, but to congruence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned, resistance decreases, momentum increases, and suddenly what felt heavy starts to move. This is also why clarity must be emotional, not just intellectual. You can know what you want logically and still not be clear. True clarity has feeling behind it. It excites you, it scares you a little. It matters enough that you're willing to adjust your habits and raise your standards. Ask yourself this, if someone watched your daily actions, would they be able to tell what you're truly committed to? Not what you say, but what you consistently do, because that's the signal being sent out every day. The universe doesn't respond to your potential, it responds to your patterns, and patterns are born from clarity. When you decide who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, life doesn't argue, it rearranges. Here's something that will change how you experience problems forever if you let it sink in. Problems don't disappear when circumstances improve. They disappear when your sense of purpose gets bigger than them. Most people try to solve problems by staring at them harder, analyzing them longer, replaying them over and over. But focus doesn't work that way. Whatever you focus on grows, and when your focus is locked on the problem, you don't get clarity, you get compression. That's why people feel overwhelmed. It's not because their problems are too big, it's because their purpose is too small in that moment. Think about it, when your life is centered around comfort, inconvenience feels like a crisis. When your life is centered around growth, challenges feel like training. Same event, different meaning. Meaning changes emotion, emotion changes action, and action changes results. Purpose is not some abstract idea, it's a lens. When your focus expands toward contribution, progress, and becoming more than you are, the mind stops obsessing over obstacles and starts organizing around solutions. You don't deny the problem, you just stop worshiping it. Most people unknowingly shrink their world to the size of their current struggle. A setback happens, and suddenly that one event becomes the center of their identity. Their conversations revolve around it. Their thoughts replay it. Their emotions rehearse it. And the problem grows, not because it's getting worse, but because it's getting more attention. But watch what happens when someone reconnects to a bigger reason, when they remember who they're doing this for, when they reconnect to what they're building, what they stand for, what kind of person they're committed to becoming. The same problem that once felt paralyzing becomes manageable. Not because it changed, but because they expanded. Purpose creates context, and context determines whether something feels unbearable or simply challenging. This is why people can endure incredible hardship when they believe it serves something meaningful. Parents push through exhaustion for their children. Athletes push through pain for a championship. Leaders push through resistance for a vision. Pain doesn't disappear, but it stops being the boss. When your focus is narrow, problems dominate your nervous system. When your focus widens, problems lose their emotional grip. You still deal with them, but you're no longer consumed by them. You move from reaction to response. And here's the key. Purpose is not found, it's chosen. You don't wait for life to hand it to you. You decide what this moment means. You decide what this challenge is shaping in you. You decide whether this obstacle is evidence that you should quit or evidence that you're growing. Most people ask, why is this happening to me? That question traps them inside the problem. Powerful people ask, what is this preparing me for? That question expands the frame. It forces the mind to look forward instead of inward. And when the frame expands, creativity returns, energy returns, options appear. This doesn't mean you suddenly enjoy struggle. It means you stop personalizing it. You stop seeing problems as verdicts on your worth and start seeing them as feedback, information, training, refinement. When your purpose is clear, inconvenience doesn't offend you. Delay doesn't discourage you. Resistance doesn't surprise you. You expect it, you plan for it, you grow through it. And let me be very direct here. If your problems feel overwhelming, it's not a judgment, it's a signal that your focus has collapsed inward, a signal that it's time to reconnect with something larger than your fear, larger than your comfort, larger than your current circumstances. Because the moment you tie your actions to something meaningful, endurance increases automatically. You don't need willpower. You have reason. You don't need motivation. You have meaning. That's when the question shifts from how do I get rid of this problem to who am I becoming as I move through this? And that question alone changes how you stand, how you breathe, how you act. Problems don't vanish when you avoid them. They shrink when your purpose outgrows them. And when your focus expands beyond the problem no longer controls the direction of your life. Now, this is where everything becomes personal, because focus doesn't start with goals. It starts with identity. Who you believe you are determines what you notice, what you tolerate, and what you pursue. Long before you take action, long before you make a decision, there's an identity running the show in the background saying, this is who I am and this is how people like me behave. Most people try to change their results without changing their identity. They want better habits, higher standards, bigger outcomes, but they're still operating from the same self-image. And the strongest force in human behavior is the need to stay consistent with who we believe we are. You will always eventually act in alignment with your identity, even if it sabotages you. That's why some people break through once and then fall back. They change their behavior temporarily, but they never updated who they believed they were. And when pressure returned, identity won. It always does. Think about the phrases people casually use. I'm not good with money. I'm just not confident. I've always been this way. Those aren't descriptions. They're declarations. And once you declare something about who you are, your focus automatically reorganizes to prove it true. Your brain starts filtering reality to support that story. You notice evidence that confirms it. You ignore evidence that challenges it. Identity determines focus, and focus determines experience. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you'll notice obstacles everywhere.